Welcome back to True Gem TV, where we are highlighting athletes from the Dayton area. Today we have a little bit of a different type of video and something that I'm excited to bring you guys, and something a little bit different from the content that you guys have been seeing on this channel. This is going to be a little series I call the Gem City Recap. Now, what my plan to do here is, kind of highlight some performances that I've seen around from some Dayton athletes as they go on to, college, pros, things like that, and kind of just go over a little bit of, kind of what they're doing, keep up with them, and kind of just give you guys an idea of how this guy did this past week. If you aren't able to, catch and see them in person, obviously, college football kicked off. There is a lot of games going on, and, it's tough to see everything. So I have made it kind of my goal to set aside some time to kind of watch these guys. And, and I'm by no means a scout or anything like that. Like, my knowledge is mostly just, I like to watch the games. I like to watch that player and see how they do. So I feel like I have a pretty good idea of some performances of these guys because I, sit there and just kind of focus on them more than the entire team. I put a focus on that. If you guys like this idea, please comment. Let me know what you guys think. And please like the video and subscribe. These are just all things that are going to help the page here and the channel here to continue to grow and to bring you guys more and, better content here as well. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So first up, I've got a few athletes here, all college football players that I want to talk about this week. And I'm going to start with the guy who, in my opinion, maybe was the most impressive out of any of the guys that I list here today. And that is Adam Trick out of Miami of Ohio, defensive end from Wayne High School. He is a junior right now. And he had a great day. They played Wisconsin last Thursday. He had 5 tackles and 2 sacks, which is huge. You think, going against Wisconsin, they're known for, being good up front. They are known for having the guys that, are good at moving that defensive line. They're used to controlling the defensive line. And man, Adam did some game wrecking for sure. He was very athletic on the edge, which was something that I know that they mentioned on the broadcast a little bit. But man, his athleticism and able to kind of get under the tackles, kind of wedge his way into the backfield, and he was all over the ball. He was making tackles. And if he wasn't making the tackles, he was eating up a block and allowing one of his other guys, one of his teammates to make the tackles. I mean, he was really impressive on the edge. Definitely stood out to, somebody that's just watching the game and has no idea. I was watching, kind of just focusing on him. But if you were just kind of watching the game and just kind of, not really looking at any one player, you would know his name by the end of the game because he was just so good at eating up blocks and making those plays and making those splash plays and big sacks when his team really needed them. Another thing that I thought was really impressive about Adam's performance, in this game, the first-string quarterback from Wisconsin went out with an injury. Now, you would think, okay, second stringer comes in, maybe to be a little easier on the defense, but and maybe it was, but also this quarterback could move. He was athletic. He was really fast. He was able to kind of evade guys in the pocket. And there was a play where Adam got a good jump off the ball, and this quarterback, man, he's doing his best to evade him, and Adam was able to wrap him up. Huge sack, might have even taken him out of field goal range. If they did make the field goal, it made it a very much tougher field goal for Wisconsin's offense. Now, Miami did lose the game, but as somebody who just watched the game and kind of, was just kind of seeing how the flow of the game was going, it was not the defense's fault that they lost that game. The offense was not able to do much of anything really against the Wisconsin defense, and in the Miami defense, man, they were solid. I mean, of course, Wisconsin, this is a Big Ten team. They're going to get theirs. But for the circumstances and kind of what the offense was putting them in situationally wise, that defense looked good. And Adam was a huge part of that. They also produced a turnover, and I'll touch a little bit on that later, actually. But, man, Adam looked good, and I'm excited to see, kind of his development this year. This is a big year for him. This is kind of his first chance to really, be that every down defensive end and be in there on those big third downs when you need a play from your defense, you need a big stop, and he came through for him. So I'm really excited to see how he continues in his development this season, and we'll be watching out for sure. But a big test against Wisconsin, and he looked really solid. So next up, we have got Emil Wagner, the junior right tackle for Notre Dame. Now, he had kind of an up-and-down game. It's a very tough matchup for him. Miami's defensive line looked amazing. They have Ruben Bain Jr. I mean, he was all over the place. I mean, he really looked like a top 5 pick right now. Obviously, it's early. But he looked like he could be that first edge rusher off the board, or one of those guys that one of the few first edge rushers that go off the board there and go to a top 10, top 15 team. He was really good, and Emil Wagner definitely struggled with some reps against him. Now, he was responsible for 1 sack and 1 quarterback hit, so we're not talking about an all-time dominant performance, at least against Wagner, from Ruben Bain Jr. But definitely had him in some of those passing downs. Kind of had Emil on his heels a couple times. There was a couple times he would have to kind of turn and try to shield him off with the backside of his body, just to do anything he can to just keep him away from his quarterback. Emil's been one of the most solid offensive linemen for Notre Dame. Going back to, last year, he was one of the few healthy guys for that offensive line, and a big reason why they were able to make it to the national championship. He gave them stability across that offensive line and kind of was an anchor for them on that right side. So, I'm sure not the first game that he wanted to have, for sure. Now, I want to talk about some positives for him, too, that I saw. He looked really good in the run game, specifically, opening up some holes on that right side of the offensive line. They would run that like little outside zone type of action, and he looked really good. Was able to create some running room there for his running backs, and something that I think, and this is nothing that he can do. Something I think that contributed maybe to him having a rougher game out there was, they did not run the ball a lot, Notre Dame, and I thought they were going to come into the game, running the football a lot, pounding the rock. You got Jeremiah Love. Some say maybe the best running back in college football, and I'm not going to argue. And they really didn't give him the ball a lot. I was really confused on that. I don't know if it's something they just saw schematically, but it's a quarterback making his first start, and you're not running the ball a lot. You're not leaning on that, Heisman candidate running back that you have. It was questionable, to say the least, for me, and I think Emil's reps, when they were running the football, looked a lot better. So, I think it's one of those things, for offensive linemen, they like to be able to run. They like to be able to attack instead of, protecting, at least to have a good mix of that. And, it just seemed like he didn't get an opportunity to kind of show that side of his game as much as you would like. And, I think it maybe, as a whole, as a team, maybe kind of, made them suffer a little bit more in this game. And then it did not help when, they're down by 2 scores. They're trying to come from behind, and the defense with those great defensive ends are able to kind of pin their ears back and, just pass rush, time after time. And it's got to be tough to, defend a guy like Ruben Bain Jr. He looked amazing. He's going to have an opportunity their next game. They're off this coming week here in week 2, but week 3 they play Texas A&M. So this is an SEC opponent here. A big chance for Emil to kind of have a little bit of a bounce back week. Have some better pass protection reps for him. And I'm sure, he's going to be looking to bounce back and get a game that he can really hang his hat on. There were some positives there for sure. And, first game of the season, I've been looking forward to, seeing how he can bounce back next week against a tough Texas A&M team. And I'm sure they've got some edge rushers that are going to be, very talented as well. They always do. So we'll see how he bounces back for next week. All right, the next guy I want to touch on here is C.J. Hicks from Alter. He got a chance to get into the game a little bit and show some very promising things. So, he had 3 tackles in the game, which is good to see. He's around the ball, especially he also transitioned from linebacker to now he's an edge, which is, I think, huge for him. Now, he's a smaller guy, but the position that Ohio State really needs somebody to kind of blossom in is edge. Last year, they had Jack Sawyer, they had JT Tuimoloau, and both of those guys are now on NFL rosters. So you're kind of looking for, okay, who's the next man up? They've got Kenyatta Jackson, who everybody was thinking would be the premier edge rusher for the team. He went down with an injury. I don't know what his status is, but right there already, you already had kind of a thin, unproven at least group at defensive end for Ohio State, and now he goes down. So they're really going to be looking to see who can we rely on here. And C.J. Hicks, he came through 4th and 5. This is a play where the game is on the line here. This is, Texas is kind of putting together a drive down 7 points, a big 4th and 5, and C.J. Hicks comes off the edge, able to get to the quarterback. Now, he didn't get the sack, but he really sped up Arch, and he made Arch Manning have to throw quicker than I'm sure he wanted to, and to throw underneath, which I know he did not want to do. And he had to throw it underneath, and Caleb Downs was right there, able to make the tackle, secure the game. And, man, C.J. Hicks, man, that jumped off the page to, I'm sure, a lot of Ohio State fans, that he was able to get off the edge quick. He was able to get to the quarterback, affect the play, and come through in a huge 4th down moment. And, even for the coaches to trust him to be out there on the 4th down with the game on the line already speaks volumes on how, they think about C.J. Hicks and maybe, what they think he could become this year. One thing I will say about him is, if you think about a guy like him, like I said, he's a smaller guy. He's a quicker guy. He's an agile guy, but he's a smaller guy. We spoke about Adam Trick. Adam is a bigger guy for sure. Like he is athletic, but he's got the bigger frame. C.J. Hicks, he's coming from linebacker, so he's not a guy that has he's not a guy that's been groomed to be an edge rusher his whole life. Like he was there at linebacker, and linebacker, they have Sonny Styles right there, and he kind of had to, I'm assuming at least, make the change to kind of give himself more of an opportunity for this year. And I think a guy that he should really focus on and kind of look to, learn from, or just kind of the guy that at his size and what he can do, the guy that is the best case scenario, is a guy like Micah Parsons. Now, obviously, we're talking about an all-pro player, a defensive player of the year candidate in the NFL. But if you think about, Micah Parsons, he's a smaller guy. He is very agile, very, very quick off the ball, very, very much able to, contort his body and get under these bigger tackles and make plays. So somebody like C.J. Hicks should be looking to kind of, take a page out of that book. And, we're not asking him to be Micah Parsons out there, but we're just asking him, learn from that, take that athleticism and use it to your advantage. Yeah, you're smaller. It may be tougher in the run game. He might be a guy that is maybe primarily playing those pass downs, at least at first. But, you can really make your mark on that position group if he's able to, use that athleticism and make big plays, make splash plays, on the quarterback. All right, so those were the 3 main guys that I wanted to talk about. Now, I have 3 other guys that are I still want to touch on, but, there's some other circumstances that is kind of preventing me from putting there up there with the 3 top guys I want to talk about. So first guy here we want to talk about is Rod Moore. Now, he did not play this past week. He did not play all of last year. This is the Michigan defensive back from Northmont. He suffered a season-ending injury last year, and he is still yet to play. Now, he is possible to play this week in a huge matchup against Oklahoma. Now, when you say a guy's possible to play and you're on the road against a great team like Oklahoma, I'm going to assume he's not going to play. And if he does, it'd be limited. But, we're going to be, I just kind of wanted to mention him just to kind of, get him in the mind. He's going to be playing soon, and we're going to be talking a lot about him because he is, at his best, he is I would say the best player from the Dayton area currently in college football. And I don't really think it's really that close. He is an elite defensive back for Michigan. If you guys remember, if you're an Ohio State or a Michigan fan, you'll definitely remember 2 years ago, Kyle McCord was driving, trying to beat Michigan, and Rod Moore comes through and gets an interception. And, as much as it sucks for me as a Buckeye fan, I am an Ohio State fan, I did enjoy seeing a guy from Dayton being able to come up and make a play like that. It made it a little bit easier for me to cope with the loss because, I like to see that, of course. So we're gonna be excited to see if he does play this weekend against Oklahoma. Definitely count on a breakdown of how he looked, how many snaps maybe he played, and that'll all be in next week's Gem City recap for sure. So we're going to be keeping our eyes on Rod Moore and wishing him the best and wishing that he, gets out there on the field here soon. Next guy we're going to talk about here is Aaron Scott Jr. from Springfield. This is his second year. He's an Ohio State Buckeye, corner. He was not able to crack the rotation against Texas, and, he's very young still, and Ohio State's corners looked amazing. Igbinosun and Matthews Jr., man, they were out there locking down. They got it. They forced a pick. They almost forced two, really. There was very close to having a second pick in that game. But, Aaron, he hasn't really been able to have the opportunity yet. But, I wanted to mention him, too, because this coming week they play Grambling State. Now, I would assume Ohio State wins by plenty of touchdowns. So I'm assuming a guy like Aaron Scott is going to get some run out there, once the game maybe gets a little bit, out of hand. I think there's a good chance we're going to be seeing some more snaps out of Aaron Scott this weekend. So I also wanted to touch on him just to kind of put him on the radar. Like, he is going to be, getting in there and, maybe by the end of the year he carves out a role for himself. But if not, I think, he's a guy that next year, because these corners they got now are looking really good, looking like they could be first-round talent, second-round talent. So, it's a guy like that, he's going to want to, make a good mark on the coaching staff and, let them know that he's somebody they can count on for next year if it's not this year. So the last guy I want to touch on here, now, he is not technically from the Dayton area. This is a guy from Westchester, currently at Miami of Ohio. But he had a great game, and, he's close enough to the Dayton area that, I kind of want to touch on him a little bit here. And that is Silas Walters. He had 4 tackles, 1 pick, and 2 passes defensed. Now, I did not know a lot about this guy, and I still am, have a lot to learn about him and about his play style and about, his story and everything. But he looked really good. He's another guy that jumped off the page to me watching that game. Him and Adam. And this is not to discredit any of the other Miami defense. The whole defense was really playing very solid, especially in that first half. They only gave up 3 points in the first half. So, against Wisconsin, against a Big Ten team, that is impressive. And, he was a big reason. The interception was huge. It was down in the red zone. He picked it off in the end zone. And, it was just a big play for them. And, 2 other passes, defense, he was playing really well. And, a guy that, like I said, he's from Westchester, but we're going to continue to follow him as well. All right, so that's going to conclude this week of Gem City Recap. Please, guys, in the comments or on social media, you can find us anywhere at TrueGemTV. Let me know what you guys think about this idea, if you guys like this, or if you have any, suggestions. If there's any players that I missed, please let me know, and I will put them on my radar and make sure to, cover them. I'm sure I have missed, some guys, and, please let me know who I missed, who I should continue looking on, and we're going to be doing a lot more of these too, I'm sure, once college basketball season comes out, because, college basketball, there's a lot more games, and I'll have a lot more to, kind of cover here, and a lot more guys that I can and talk about. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this idea. And please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. These are all things that are just gonna help us grow and help this channel, kind of just continue to go along here and to put out good content for you guys. And just again, let me know what you guys want to see. If you guys have any other ideas, definitely open to it. I'm gonna do some mailbags and stuff like that. So if you guys have just any topic you want to talk about, I'm going to try to do some videos where we kind of just go through what anybody's thinking of and, just kind of get you guys more involved and stuff along those lines. That's going to do it for this episode of Gem City Recap. Stay on the lookout. We got more content coming as we get into the best time of the year with sports. We got football, basketball, everything coming. So stay on the lookout, and we'll catch you next time.